Hello and welcome. My name is Alonda Carter and I am the Recovering Hunbot, and this is Hey Hun, You Woke Up. I'm not really sure what episode it is. It doesn't really matter because I've interwoven part of my Notorious series, which is still underway. I'm still working on it. And I've also dropped that as a podcast. So this is going to be a video and also a podcast. Today, I am talking to my friend, Doug Brooks, and we are going to discuss some of the things that came out earlier this month in relationship to income claims, specifically as it has to relate to Market America, and also this ruling that is about penalty and how that can be used instead of trying to go after multi-level marketing companies as pyramid schemes. So let's go ahead and welcome Doug to the show. Welcome, Doug. Thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited to discuss this with you because my understanding is, about like this, since I don't have a background in it. But one of the things that happened to me, I guess it was at the beginning of November, because I have different Google alerts set up, and I saw that Market America had to take down a whole bunch of deceptive income claims. Now, during the pandemic, what we have seen is a lot of people joining different MLMs, and in Beachbody, over 200,000 people have joined. And that was a couple of months ago, which just absolutely blows me away because as a former Beachbody coach, I'm like, yeah, good luck with all of that. And one of the things that anyone in an MLM attempts to do is make it sound like you can come in here and you can start making money right away. And apparently, Market America this year alone, there was over 450 deceptive claims, many of them from the founder, J.R. Rittinger, from him, as well as other people who were distributors in it. Well, along with that, that same day, I had an alert that's about the FTC commissioner's appeal to the Hill on Section 13B, which has to do with the penalty offense that the FTC can apply. And when I saw all of this, I was like, fantastic, because I mean, any of us that are in the anti-MLM community, I think we'd all like to see this business model, if you will, or it's so hard for me to even call it that. We'd like to see it just obliterated and go away because it's not doing anything good for most people. So I wanted to talk to you today about the deceptive income claims and also what does this mean if we can resurrect the penalty offense. So Doug, tell me a bit, because I know you have worked on the deceptive income claims. Tell me a bit about that and what you have done and how that is impacting people right now during the pandemic.
Well, to go back to the Federal Trade Commission, Federal Trade Commission doesn't, the statute that created the Federal Trade Commission doesn't mention the concept of pyramid scheme. What the Federal Trade Commission Act says is unfair or deceptive acts or practices in trade or commerce are unlawful. And it leaves it to the FTC to decide, well, what actually is a deceptive practice? What is an unfair practice? And how are we going to go about this? And the FTC over the decades has developed what sorts of things are considered deceptive or unfair. And back in the 70s, it decided that pyramid schemes are a deceptive practice, which is a good thing for us because it clearly is deceptive. And once the FTC started enforcing the law against MLM companies that were behaving this way, the FTC basically has two ways of going after companies. They can say that they are a pyramid scheme, or they can say these companies are making deceptive earnings claims, or they can do both. And most of the time, they actually do both. For instance, when they went after Amway back in the 1970s, everyone has heard, at least in our little area, about the Amway decision and how Amway was found not to be a pyramid scheme. But in that same decision, Amway was found to be guilty of making deceptive earnings claims. They were also found guilty of antitrust violations. We can get into that, another time. But so typically, when the FTC prosecutes, and that pattern has continued right up until today. When they go after an MLM company, they usually allege that it's both a pyramid scheme and they say it's making deceptive earnings claims. Sometimes they just say it's making deceptive earnings claims. Back in the early 90s, they went after Nu Skin. They did not allege that Nu Skin was a pyramid scheme, but they did say it was making deceptive earnings claims and deceptive products claims. When they went after Herbalife a few years ago, they didn't use the word pyramid scheme, although the complaint that they filed was, you could have just, all you needed to do was add the word pyramid scheme and it would have been a perfect pyramid scheme complaint. They just didn't use that term, but they called the whole compensation plan an unfair practice. And the significance, or the practical significance of that, is that it is relatively difficult to prove that an MLM company is a pyramid scheme. It's sort of complicated, and you need to look at how many retail sales are being made, and are they being made to customers, or are they just distributors selling to other distributors, that sort of thing. It can take years of investigation to get to the point where you can allege that a company is a pyramid scheme. Alleging that a company is making deceptive earnings claims is comparatively a lot simpler. All you have to do is say, well, here's what the company says about its opportunity, and then here's what the actual experience of distributors is. You still, if you're the FTC, you still have to do an investigation. You still have to figure out how many people really make an income that's comparable to what the claim is. But I think you can tell it's a lot easier from a regulatory point of view to make that claim. And one of the things that is 100% certain in this area is business opportunities, or pretend business opportunities like MLM, they don't get sold unless someone makes an earnings claim. There's no way that any of these opportunities get sold unless someone is saying to the prospect, you're going to make a lot of money at this. Maybe it's going to be a specific dollar figure. Maybe it's going to be a lifestyle claim, like, you're going to pay off your mortgage, or you're going to be able to retire, or whatever it is. I'm sure you've seen hundreds of them. And if you've been involved in MLM, you've probably made earnings claims, because that's the way you recruit people for the most part. So it is 100%, or as near as 100% as you can ever get, that these companies could not operate without making earnings claims. The other point to make is that any earnings claim that an MLM company makes is almost certainly going to be deceptive, because there's such a tiny fraction of people who participate make anything approaching a real income. If you say anything about the potential for earnings, you're almost inevitably going to be making a deceptive claim, because it just isn't going to pan out. I mean, unless you tell people, well, if you join this company and you spend X dollars a month, whatever the requirement is to get involved, you've got maybe a 1% chance of making real good money. I mean, I don't know how good that pitch is as a marketing. I think I'd rather buy a lottery ticket, and I'd probably have a better chance of success at my lottery ticket than at participating in this MLM opportunity. So that's the long version of the sort of the two routes that the FTC can take when they go after an MLM company.
Well, what's interesting is when you bring up the deceptive claims, because a lot of time, in my opinion, I think that kind of comes out in their stories that people will tell. And even it can be people who are not necessarily really making a livable wage, but maybe they've sold a little bit, but they try to make it sound like bigger than what it is, because that way more people will be attracted to it. That seems to be one of the pitches, is to tell the rags to riches type story of how basically my life was terrible and, you know, I was living in a gutter until this opportunity came along, which is in itself deceptive, because
Yeah.
it's impossible for most people, unless you have a ginormous network, to experience the success that they claim. But that's very alluring to someone if they are in a vulnerable state, like how many people are right now, like I was when I joined, you know, Beachbody back in the day. But I'm kind of wondering this: most companies do not put out an income disclosure. And those that do, because I've looked at a bazillion of them by now, you can just look at that and tell exactly who's making the money. And it's not the people at the bottom because they're feeding the machine, it's the people at the top.
Yeah.
Do you think that if this penalty offense is brought back, that the FTC would be able to look at these compensation plans and the income disclosure to be able to say that you're making a deceptive claim?
I absolutely, I think there's two different issues in there. The 13B issue that you mentioned, let's put that aside a minute because it's more of a technical, it's a procedure that the FTC has in its quiver. I mean, the FTC, the statute is sort of complicated. There are a number of different routes that the FTC can take when they're trying to enforce that unfair or deceptive standard. So let's put that aside for a moment. The issue of the deceptive earnings claims, I absolutely think that that's already a means that the FTC has to go after both the companies and the high level people that are making these claims. I would love to see the FTC do more, not only against the companies, but against the high level people who are the 1% of the 1% that actually are making a lot of money at this, because they are as guilty as the companies. The system, the MLM system, wouldn't function without both the companies and the high level people. There's always been this symbiotic relationship between those two groups. The companies need the high level people. The high level people need the companies. They need each other to do the damage that they do. And you know, there's another sort of whole set of issues, is that relationship is very fraught. But I think the FTC should be more, not only aggressive against going after MLM companies, but aggressive in going after the high level, the quote unquote independent distributors, who in many cases are the ones that are making these deceptive claims, and they're training their recruits to make these claims. I know in a number of systems that I've looked at, you're taught to, you should develop your your story, and you should develop your income story. And of course, this is ridiculous for, you're recruiting someone who's made little or nothing from this, and they're supposed to go out and recruit other people to join this income opportunity. They barely know what it is, or if they're early on, they have no idea what they're doing. But they're still, you got to keep that recruitment engine, rolling along, and that's how it works. The 13B thing, that story that you mentioned, this is something that is affecting the FTC, not just in the MLM area, but in the way it proceeds in general. There was a decision by a federal court of appeals, the Seventh Circuit, which covers Illinois and some of the other Midwestern states. And that decision said that the way that the FTC has been prosecuting companies for decades is they've been misusing the statute. according to the court. And the statute gives the FTC the right to seek an injunction. An injunction is like an order for a company to do something. And very often with an MLM case, for instance, the FTC will seek an injunction to shut down the company. But what they generally also do is they seek an order of restitution, which is money to pay back all the losers. And what the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals said is, no, you can't, the FTC cannot seek restitution as part of one of these injunction cases. You've got to take another route, a more complicated route, to go after these companies. Now, this case is going to go to, in fact, I think it's being briefed before the Supreme Court, and God knows what's going to happen there, because now we've got a very conservative, anti-regulatory Supreme Court. So I'm very concerned, and I imagine the folks at the FTC are very concerned about what the Supreme Court is going to do with this. If that decision stands, it'll force the FTC to take a different route. And that article that you saw was one of the ways that they could do it. They've had this statutory authority for a long time. They just haven't utilized that particular section. So I have a feeling this is getting a little bit on the technical side for your audience, but I mean it is a matter of concern because we have the Supreme Court we have for all the reasons that we have it, and I'm going to be watching that case very carefully to see what happens. But in the meantime, the encouraging thing from that article is that at least the Democratic commissioners of the FTC are taking a very good hard look at MLM, and in particular, multi-level marketing deceptive earnings claims. And I think there's a good chance with the new administration in January that we're going to see a lot more productive activity by the FTC against MLM companies. Because the FTC is a commission composed of 5 people, 3 from the party that controls the presidency, and 2 from the other party. So we're going to see a shift in the control of the FTC, and I'm hoping that shift will favor a more comprehensive approach to enforcing actions against MLM companies.
Now, let me ask you this, because those of us who are critics of this type of, the business opportunities offered by multi-level marketing, network marketing, direct sales, whatever name they want to slap on it, because I always like to change it up, because we're not this, but they actually are. Because if you look like a duck, walk like a duck, quack like a duck, you're a duck, and they're all ducks.
Yeah.
But just the average person and people who are in the anti-MLM community, because the FTC and the DSA, that's the Direct Selling Association, in case anybody, watching doesn't know what that is. It's kind of like, well, who's really guarding the hen house? Because there seems to be like this back and forth between the two organizations. What can people do so that the FTC, or I don't know, just a miracle of some sort comes along and we're able to put more pressure on these companies and stop them from taking advantage of people? Because I think that's the big thing, is that the average person wants to be able to help out, but oftentimes, and I've done a video on how you file with the FTC, and all of that, but they don't necessarily take the steps. What are some things that we can do in the anti-MLM community, those of us who are content creators, and also people who are not content creators? What can they do to help with that shift, so that when there is that transition in the FTC, that maybe there'll be more eyes on multi-level marketing companies, so that there's more opportunity for actions to be taken?
Well, one thing is write your congressman. These days, it's actually fairly easy. Most representatives and senators have websites where if you are in their district, you can send them an email and tell your story, right? Go through, and it doesn't have to be in legal language. You just have to make the point that you thought you were joining a real income opportunity. It turned out to be a scam. The FTC, the thing about the FTC is, they do a great job when they go after a particular company, but they don't have the manpower to go after 1,000 MLM companies. And as you say, they all do this. I mean, every time you look at one of these MLM companies, you find the same things. You find deceptive earnings claims. You find, 1% of 1% are making a lot of money, and the vast majority are losing. And they use the same techniques, the same lines. You see the same marketing pitches, and they just change the names and they change the titles, but it's the same stuff, and it's been going on for decades. And what the FTC has been doing is they say, well, we're doing a case-by-case approach. So we hear about a problem and we go after that company. And we hear about a problem, we go after that company. But what about the whole industry? What about the fact you shut down one company and those high-level people that are so important, what they do is they migrate to other companies or they set up their own. So it's a big game of whack-a-mole, and it's going to continue that until the FTC has the resources and the political motivation to go after the whole industry. And that's what needs to happen from the government point of view. Now, aside from that, I mean, what you guys in the anti-MLM community are doing, I think, is wonderful. I think it is a breath of fresh air, because now with the internet and with the ease of looking up companies, the key thing that you guys have to do is make sure, I know the term SEO. I don't know, the technology of it all, but I know that the MLM companies are masters of that search engine optimization, and they manage to sort of bury bad reports about themselves. I don't know, you got to find the tech guys who will raise your hits up to the first page. You need to be in that first page of results. So when someone is looking up Beachbody or Market America, they don't just find the pablum that the companies put out about how wonderful their opportunity is, or the top level distributors doing their marketing things. You need to have the bad stuff rising to the surface, so that someone who is at least doing a minimal job of research into a company, they search for the company and they find you. And then you just tell your story, I mean, like you've been doing, but you just need to be farther out there.
Well, I think because there is so many people on YouTube now creating videos about anti-MLM, that, I mean, our videos do come up when you put in, different keywords, because it's all related to the keywords within, YouTube for the SEO and all that sort of stuff. But I do think that is making a difference, because I know, at least on my videos, and I can't say which ones off the top of my head, but I do have people all the time who will say, oh, I'm so glad I found this, because I was just about to do X, Y, and Z, or I did join this and this is what happened to me. And so it gives that opportunity for people to not join, and also another opportunity for people to say, this is my story. And also, like I told you before I hit record, is I do have those people who are claiming to be successful. Maybe some of them are that 1% of the 1%, I don't know, who want to come in and they want to try to discredit those of us who are critiquing and criticizing, MLM companies. But they don't really have the power, because we don't have to allow them to basically spread their little janky ways, which they try to do, because it's more about giving that information to people who are about to join, or they did join, and they had a horrible time, and now they're feeling like that they were the problem, which they weren't, because it's the system. So there is some of that, I think, that's happening with, at least within YouTube. Now, in terms of just, Google in and of itself, I don't know about that, but I do know a lot of people do turn to YouTube to look up these companies, which I think is fantastic. And I do know that overall, the anti-MLM movement within social media, whether it's on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, I mean, just, name a social media platform, more and more people, and it's even on TikTok too, because I've seen some of that over there. More and more people are speaking out about it, just like how social media allowed multi-level marketing companies to explode. Well, now there's a whole bunch of us open our mouths who are telling the other side. So I think it's something that can help, push them down and not let them continue to grow, even though there's always going to be people who are going to be wanting to join because they believe in the dream that's sold to them. And
Or they're vulnerable. I mean, that's
yeah,
what you asked about. What's going on with recruiting and COVID? I mean, there are people who have they're lost their jobs, or they're underemployed, or they're hurting. And MLM, I mean, part of the pitch has always been, we can solve that problem. We can provide you with a stable income and residual income and retirement. It's not really a business. It's a retirement plan. You just have to recruit a few people, and then you can just relax and sit back and watch the checks roll in. I mean, that's always been the pitch, and it's particularly effective when people are hurting, and it's you need money to get into these things, but the marketers are masters at getting people to spend their last dollar on these supposed opportunities, which really are anything but, and they're like I said before, they are really no better and probably worse than lottery tickets.
What I find interesting is because as I continue to dig into this, I don't know if you've seen any of the videos I've done in my Notorious series, which is going through the top leaders at one point when they were with One Life, One Coin, and MLM cryptocurrency
I think I
scam.
started that. I haven't seen the whole thing. It's a fascinating story. It really it combines both the MLM and a whole another series of scams and the so I will definitely take a longer look at that.
It's so dark, and there's so many different I would just say problems involved with each one of these leaders. And what you were saying earlier about how they'll leave one opportunity and go to another one. And that's exactly what happened. Once Ruja Ignatova vanished in 2017, these top people, cockroaches, they just like scattered. And you see some of them they will join some of the same things, or they will join one and then leave it, and like you said, they start their own thing. And those people, especially these people that I'm doing in the Notorious series, I look at them, they're professional scammers. The people who are like the stay-at-home moms, and even some of the top people, like say in Beachbody or whatnot, I don't see them at that same level of scamming. It's almost like there's this, this scale, and you got the stay-at-home mom over here, and then you have someone that's like Ruja Ignatova who started this MLM, and then you have all those top leaders too. And it's just kind of like this very weird kind of scale of the scam scale, I guess, which maybe one day I'll do a video about the scam scale, because I do think that does exist. But I do think that oftentimes in anti-MLM, people misrepresent scammers, because using the word scammer in your title, on your thumbnail, that gets people's attention, but they don't really know the depths of what true scamming is. For instance, in the OneCoin thing, and I'll probably end up interviewing Daniel. Daniel did basically, I mean, his last dime, and I can't remember, he's in Uganda, I think, and sold his family's last 3 goats so that he could join OneCoin. Lost everything.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, that, when I look at that level of scam versus like Beachbody, very, very different. But I feel like those people who do join, who are like at the top, could be on the trajectory to become like what those people are that were top leaders in One Life, One Coin, which is frightening to me. It just makes my blood run cold, because I don't always think that people who even start having success, that they realize that that's what they're becoming, because they believe in what they're doing so much. They don't see that what they're doing is problematic.
Have you seen there's a ebook called Merchants of Deception by Eric Scheibler. Um, he was an Amway distributor back in the 80s and 90s, and he rose to the level of Emerald, which is fairly high up. And supposedly, if you're an Emerald distributor in Amway, you know you're made it. You've got a full-time income. What he explains, and he goes through this his whole process, his recruitment, and then his rising through the ranks. He was far from making a full-time income. He was, I mean, he'd be going up on stage and talking about all the money, and he was getting big checks, but he was spending a lot of money to get those checks. You know, I mean, that's one of the things that is not revealed to you is that even when you start making a decent income from your commission checks, you are spending a lot of money bringing people, you know, recruiting people, bringing them to meetings, you know, doing all the things that you need to do to keep that recruitment engine, you know, rolling along. He actually ended up declaring bankruptcy, and he wrote a book about, you know, how he realized that he was, not only was he a victim himself, but he was recruiting other people into this thing. I mean, and he felt bad about what he was doing, um, and decided to tell the story. And it's worth, even though you know you know we're talking of experiences, you know, 25 or 30 years ago. It is still relevant today. It's still going on. I mean, some of the techniques now use the internet, but this was all of everything that happened to you, it happened decades ago. To, you know, it just, it hasn't really changed that much. It's just MLM is very good at just taking each new technology that's developed. Communication technology is used to the same end, or the same marketing pitches are used. Um, but I would another important book from that era is Ruth Carter's book, Behind the Smoke and Mirrors: Amway Motivational Organizations. Again, she sort of peels back the layers of deception, of how Amway distributors are really making their money. What she demonstrates is that a lot of them were making money not by selling Amway products, but by running meetings. You know, they were charging distributors to go to these meetings, and selling books and motivational tapes. And a lot of the high level folks were making more money in that business than they were in the real supposed Amway business. None of them were making money doing the Amway thing. Um, so that feature of the victims are also the perpetrators, that
Mm-hmm.
you are trained to deceive other people before you realize what you are doing. And then most people, once they realize it, like you, they get out of the business. But there are always a few, like you say, who you know, rise up, and somehow people have, I think, an unlimited ability to sort of deceive themselves as to what they're doing. So, you know, no one thinks of themselves as evil. You know, they always, you know, you always come up with some way of justifying what you're doing. And these folks that rise to the very highest levels, they have figured out ways of justifying what they're doing to themselves, so that they can sleep at night. But
There's definite some mental gymnastics that they're having to do again and again and again, which is frightening. It truly is to me. Now, I think one of the things that's happening now is because a lot of the companies that I've looked at, people are not necessarily selling the motivational tapes and stuff, like what you said. They will promote different personal development that you should be reading, blah, 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 blah. But they're offering courses, which, always my spidey sense goes up, because as a professional instructional designer, I actually know how to create courses that are going to teach something. But these people, I've looked at so many of them, and it's like, they're so poorly designed that they end up oftentimes being a way to, and I've done, you know about my videos on Darren and Mike, how they have used a course to get people to then join a Nagic, and it's a crappy course. You're not really learning anything. It's just a way, another lead magnet for them to get people to join them. So I think there's been a shift from the things that were used, like the tapes and everything in the past, to doing it now, like through courses in different ways. Because like you said, MLMs are really good at being able to leverage technology, the latest thing that's come on, and they get people to do that. And then it becomes monkey see, monkey do. And everybody is starting to do the exact same thing over and over and over again, just like you do in terms of the overall recruitment scheme.
yeah, that characteristic of the personal development courses, or whatever they are, that industry has sort of grown side by side with the MLM industry, and there's a lot of crossover.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes way back. It's sort of shocking to me now, saying this to you, how long this has been going on with really no one, shutting it down completely. But just to take an example, way back, one of the big MLMs back in the 70s was something called Coscot, Koscot, Interplanetary, and they sold cosmetics. But the guy who founded Coscot, Glenn Turner, also had a personal development company called Dare to Be Great. And Dare to Be Great was ultimately became a pyramid scheme as well. But these things grew side by side. They were feeding off each other. And the Dare to Be Great personal development, improve your life, improve your marketing, improve your skills type of thing, was a feeder into the Coscot Interplanetary, the MLM selling cosmetics. So these courses, this feature of having MLM people also selling courses, again, it's been going on a long time, and it's another reason why the FTC's approach of going case by case, methodically going after one company at a time. It's great to shut down that particular company, but it's not shutting down the whole industry. And the whole industry, have this. I don't see an industry here that needs to exist. This is not a. If you were developing a product and you wanted to find out, how should I distribute this product? Should I franchise? Should I go to a big distributor? Should I sell mail order? You wouldn't pick MLM as one of the ways of selling this product. It's not a very efficient or effective way at selling a product. MLM companies are founded primarily by distributors. It is a marketing plan in search of a product. The product really doesn't matter. The products may be fine. They may be perfectly adequate cosmetics or whatever the other things that they may do. But that's not the reason the companies exist. The companies exist because of the compensation plan. They are recruiting distributors. They are in the business of selling business opportunities that are in the business of selling business opportunities. And the people that are going from company to company, I mean, they may be selling cosmetics one year, and they may be selling water filters the next year, and they may be selling, God knows what the year after that. It doesn't really matter. They figured out how to recruit people. They figured out how to run that recruiting machine so that they rise to the top.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, what I find so, I guess, fascinating and also disturbing is it's one thing to look at multi-level marketing companies here within the US versus starting to look at them, worldwide in different countries.
Yeah,
Because the problem that we have is bad enough, but it's not just here, it's everywhere. And so let's just say we shut them down here, these people would still be able to go to a different country and
yeah.
start one of these things again. It's,
Oh, I
it's
mean, you talked about the guy who sold his last three goats to join an MLM. I mean, that is distressing. I mean, here we are, in this country. I mean, there are, the MLMs cause a lot of damage, but we are such a rich country that there are a lot of people that can afford to lose a few $1,000 and chalk it up to experience. But you go to Africa or Asia, there are people that they're putting their life savings into these things, and that is totally distressing. For the most part, these are U.S. companies that are doing this. There are some that are clones that people have figured out how to do them, but a lot of them are U.S. companies, and they've realized that they can't really recruit effectively here anymore because people like you are out there, or people have, enough people have been burned, so they're going overseas, and they went to Europe, and then they went to Asia, and now they're hitting Africa, and everyone wants to go to China, um, and they'll bribe their way into China if they can. Um, and it's definitely become a worldwide thing, but it's one of the shameful things that the U.S. Economy has done, is to create this scam and let it run wild throughout the world.
so what could we do that let's just say that magically poof, we've been able to shut down MLMs in the US. Just let's pretend that would be fantastic. But then again, they would go on to these different countries because we can't just stop here and just worry about only the US because of everyone else. What can be done for the rest of the world in terms of having these things no longer exist?
Well, the rest of the world very often, this may have changed somewhat over the past few years because of the miserable administration that we've had. But a lot of countries do look to U.S. laws as a model for what to do. And when a new business is coming in, they look at, you don't always follow them, but they do, people pay attention. So if the FTC did an effective job at reining in this industry, I think there would be a lot of regulators in other countries that would tend to follow suit. Because one thing that's clear is that the pattern of recruitment and loss doesn't change based on what country you're in. It's the same thing. It's going to happen and has happened everywhere. And in fact, because most of these companies are U.S. based companies, when an MLM expands overseas, the top level U.S. distributors are still the ones that benefit the most because they are at the top of the pyramid. So they are. So here we are. We're not only exporting this scam pattern of activity to other countries, we are sucking money from those poor countries back to these wealthy high level distributors who are at the top of the heap. And I think at least in countries where the regulators are paying attention, if we had an effective regime over here, I think they would pay attention. But maybe they'll go ahead and shut things down even if we aren't leading. I'm hopeful that can happen as well. People are. I'm certainly hearing increasing reports of folks in other countries who are getting clued into what MLM is all about, and they just need to be in a position to be able to do something about it.
Oh, well, if we have this shift, in the FTC, and they are able to take more actions than what has been happening in the past 4 years, do you think that will have an impact on other countries? Will they be watching what's going on and maybe follow suit and do some of the same things?
I certainly I think so. I think that's the point I was trying to make is that I think that will I think people do pay attention. They are watching, and if something effective happens over here, I think you'll see a lot of countries following suit. Um, and it would be helpful to have sort of an international coordination. There are already in other areas of the law, there are international groups that cooperate with these things. I mean, you talk about antitrust violations. There are when there very often these antitrust conspiracies are have international impacts. So you can see prosecutions by multiple countries against an international consortia of companies that are fixing prices or restricting supply, whatever they're doing. So and there are other types of lawbreakers that operate internationally, and that there are international mechanisms for going after these. So there's no reason why that can't happen with MLM. It should be happening.
So what can people outside of the US do? I mean, we can report things to the FTC, we can write, our congressman. What can people, in the UK and, Australia, what can they do to help their countries shutting down this type of structure?
Well, certainly countries like the UK and Australia have they have government agencies that are supposed to protect consumers from fraud, analogous to the FTC. So in those countries, people have the ability to go to those agencies or those prosecutors and say, I've been ripped off, or this company is ripping off people, and similar standards apply. I think the more serious problems are with countries that don't have as well developed government agencies that are just go after fraud, or those that they have agencies but they're hopelessly compromised or corrupted, because the money that MLM companies can spread around sort of overwhelms the folks that want to do the right thing. So it's interesting. There have been a few prosecutions of MLM companies for bribing officials in China for the right to get in there and do work. And so, I mean, we have a law in the U.S. that supposedly prohibits you from bribing foreign officials to gain a benefit. And that law, the SEC has used that law and going after, and the Department of Justice as well has gone after companies like Herbalife and Avon and a few others that have essentially bribed officials in China to get licenses to operate there. Um, so there are mechanisms. I think mainly it's the will that needs to be, and it's I mean the people, again, the victims in other countries need to do the same things that we were talking about earlier. They need to go to their elected officials, and they need to complain. They need to speak out. They need to go on the internet in their own languages and tell their stories, and get their get on that first page of Google hits, or whatever they're using. Um, but I think that's the approach we've got to take.
So basically be that squeaky wheel. If we all just keep,
Yeah.
talking and talking loudly and talking often about it, it's,
Yeah. You got to know, you got to talk, because one of the things that for many years was a feature here was that people thought if they failed, well, I didn't work hard enough, or I didn't follow the plan, or I didn't do the right things, or this isn't for me. They didn't know the extent of the people, the people who lost money around them. It was, and that's one of the things that hopefully is changing, that people are finding each other, and they're realizing that it's not because I'm a stooge, it's because this system was, could never have succeeded. There's no way I could be the best salesman in the world, but if I didn't join early enough, I would never rise to the top. So
Now, I know in some of them, and I know it happened with OneCoin, is when some of these leaders would join, they would just like stick a whole bunch of people underneath them so they would
yeah,
automatically have it. And I'm sure that happens with all of them. That's not a one-off. That is, a method that is used so that they can show, look, this person is successful
yeah,
and you can be too. And just like I've done some videos on some top level Beachbody coaches, but when you start looking at their background, they are all have some kind of a skill set that would have helped them. And there was one who was competed in like bodybuilding or bikinis, or I can't remember exactly what. And I looked at that and I thought, I wonder if they have like what do you call it? People like in the field looking for who they can get to join the MLM and then make that person successful, because it's all a ruse. It's all this smoke and mirrors and make everybody think that they can do it. But the reality is not everyone can. Most people can't. But I'm dovetailing that into another problem that I see, and definitely was happening with Market America, and it happens with most MLMs, is that celebrities will either be a spokesperson or they join. And when they join, of course, a bunch of other people are going
yeah.
to join underneath them. And I keep thinking, well, surely those celebrities are just like the average bear here. Like most people don't really know how deceptive these opportunities are. But what can we do so that they wake up and don't do that? Now, I do know, I'm thinking, oh, well, they're probably their vanity or whatever. It's like, it's flattering that they could just make a lot of money in this way. But that's a problem if you have someone with a big name and a big following, just like, oh, what was, she was on Charmed. She played Piper, and I can't remember her name, but she joined Monet, and then Black China joined Monet recently. And so these people who are doing that, what can we do, or can we do anything so celebrities stop endorsing these companies or stop joining them?
Well, that's a really great question, and what I'm thinking of is what I think you're familiar with this company called Nexium,
Mm-hmm.
that Keith Raniere, who's now in jail, founded, and I represented Rick Ross in a case that went on for 12 years that Nexium filed against him. But one of the things that happened early on, in fact, before that lawsuit began, is Raniere had gotten some celebrity. I'm thinking it was. I don't want to name the celebrity because I don't want to get this wrong, but it was a young woman actress who was going to speak at some Nexium event, and the publicity, there was some publicity about Nexium being a cult, and she backed off. She canceled the event. So celebrities, I think you're right. They don't know what they're getting into. I mean, often maybe they have a publicist or an agent who is the person who gets them to join these things. And I think celebrities are certainly susceptible to public pressure along with everyone else. I mean, I don't advocate being trolls, but I do think that a well considered correspondence to that celebrity or their agent or their publicist or someone to indicate, hey, you are involved, you're being set up to recruit people into this business where 99% of people fail. Do you really want your name and your image associated with this kind of a business? I have no experience with that, sort of doing that from the ground up, but I would hope that would function to keep celebrities from because MLMs love celebrities. They love getting people. They hire sports figures or actors or other prominent people to promote them or to give them this aura of success. Even if the person is not, they're not a distributor, but they are endorsing them, and the companies know the power of that kind of influence. So I think it's important that celebrities be educated about what they're getting into.
Well, I think that just, goes back to, that's why it's important for people to continue to speak out against this type of opportunity, business structure, so that more and more people can learn about it.
Absolutely.
Including celebrities, because they're like you and me. They don't know everything. And, I'm sure if something comes along and it's like, oh, that sounds good, sure, I'll do it. They don't know the repercussions of their name being attached to something that ends up taking advantage of thousands, if not millions of people. Well, Doug, I want to thank you so much for your time. I always enjoy, chatting with you, and I appreciate your expertise. So I guess, again, it goes back to, we just got to keep on being a voice, be that squeaky wheel, be loud, speak out over and over and over again, because just doing it one time, in my opinion, is not enough.
Yeah. You gotta be out there and out front and tell your story and don't be afraid of a lot of people are afraid of looking foolish because they got into one of these things. Don't do it. What you're doing is you're helping people by saying, hey, learn from my mistakes. Don't feed the recruiting machine. So I think you're doing great work, and I hope you continue, and I hope that the FTC pays attention and follows your lead and takes a look at the whole industry and not doing their sort of methodical one by one approach, which is never going to solve the problem.
We don't have enough people, to be able to work on all of that.
Yeah.
But I'm also kind of hoping that the FTC, because especially some of the younger people that are, social media savvy, maybe, my video, someone else's video or article or something on Instagram starts coming into their little bubble, so that they start seeing that it's not just one company, it's hundreds, it's thousands of companies all doing the same thing, slapping a different name on it, slapping a different product out there, but they all operate in the same way, and they all depend on recruitment and depend on the people who were recruited to continue to buy the products or services.
Yeah, it is. It really is the same thing over and over again.
Well, again, Doug, thank you
It's
so
great
very
talking with you,
much.
Yolanda. You're doing great work.
Thank you. I'm going to pause it now so that we can chat for a moment.
Okay.
Well, I hope you found what Doug and I spoke about to be useful. I'd love to know your thoughts about it. Make sure that you leave me a comment, and if you have questions, because I'm going to probably have more conversations with Doug, because he has so much information to provide. And what are some questions you'd want me to ask him? What would you want us to discuss? Thank you so much for being here, and remember, you're beautiful and I love you.